I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us once again, a guy who worked for about 3 decades as a private citizen in and out of Washington. He, because he did work on a lot of medical issues, actually, but he developed a deep a group of sources. Some of them I know who they are. I can't tell you who they are. He is Dr. Dave Janda from DaveJanda.com, Operations Freedom. He's a patriot. Dr. Dave, I want you to come on and straighten us out with a lot of questions here.
So here we go again with, I believe, Trump being underestimated in his ability to negotiate a deal. And, you know, it's interesting. Whether it's the Republicans, whether it's McConnell or Ryan or Schumer or Pelosi, you would think after a year's time of him working out negotiations that they finally would see the light and go, you know, we're playing with somebody who's not dumb, and we're playing with somebody who's really strategic in how he gets things done. You know, and let me give you an example of it. Some people say, well, like what? Well, let's look at this North Korea thing, right? Trump talked in public about essentially going after Kim Jong-un and sending some of our stealth bombers over to Guam, pre-positioning them. But I can tell you things that I heard behind the scenes months ago that I can talk about, and that is that very early in the Trump administration, while he was talking tough, you know, like a potentially, there are people out there saying, you know, and the hysterics on the left were, oh, we're going to have a nuclear war within days. We're going to, you know, well, what I understand is that about a year ago, in the spring of 2017, very soon after Trump took office, he had individuals representing the Trump administration actually sitting down and meeting with Kim Jong-un and meeting with China and meeting with Russia. Now, one of the names I've heard from several sources that was involved in those sit-down negotiations with Kim Jong-un was actually Rudy Giuliani. That's what I've been told. And Giuliani's negotiations with Kim Jong-un, with the Chinese and the Russians, ultimately led to a meeting in November of 2017. If you go back on the calendar, you'll see that Trump went on a 5-nation tour in Asia. And during that tour, it's my understanding that President Trump sat down and met with Kim Jong-un's cousin, who was handpicked by Kim Jong-un to be his right hand in these negotiations. And President Trump, it's my understanding, sat down and met with Kim Jong-un's cousin, who is very trusted reportedly by Kim Jong-un, to negotiate things further. So the lamestream fake media is out there saying, well, this, you know, Trump's going to negotiate. He's going to sit down now. It's been announced that he's going to sit down and talk to Kim Jong-un. Like, this is the first meeting that will have occurred amongst the United States and Korea, with China and Russia also being involved. It's my understanding that here we are with Trump again, underestimated, that this has already occurred. These meetings have already occurred, and now it's just the ceremonial part that has to occur. And it's my understanding that Trump has negotiated a, if you will, a unification of the Korean Peninsula with the ultimate goal of not only peace, but removal of our forces from that peninsula. Now, let me tell you something, Greg. Barack Obama, what was he, 1 month into office, won the Nobel Peace Prize. For what?
Nothing.
Nothing. He then went on this drone campaign
where
drone
he killed
killing thousands and thousands of innocent people,
including a 16-year-old
Peace Prize laureate.
Including a 16-year-old kid whose father was a suspected terrorist.
Right.
No due process. A 16-year-old American with no due process.
So if there's anyone who deserves a Nobel Prize for unification of South and North Korea, something that every other president, albeit all globalists, right? And their goal was to create and continue conflict, because out of conflict, the globalist system gets more power, control, and more money. So they were, the puppets, the Obamas, the Bushes, the Clintons. They were all doing it. There wasn't any progress there because they were puppets of the Rothschild Rockefeller axis of the globalists. What Trump has done is he's essentially diffused that situation. Yes, working with China, talking to Russia. What's wrong with talking? If it means getting to a peaceful situation. And if you will, making it so that the Korean Peninsula can be reunified, our forces can be pulled home. Hey, guess what? We can now use those forces on the southern border, right? Imagine that. So if there's anyone who deserves a Nobel Prize, in fact, and this will drive the progressives, this will drive the globalist syndicate nuts, me saying this, but it's true. If there's anyone who deserves a Nobel Prize, if this continues on the path it's been taking, is Trump.
Let's come on back closer to home. That's excellent stuff. Let's come back closer to home and your sources. You said early on that Mueller was flipped the day before he became special prosecutor. I mean, the guy committed treason. He allowed the Uranium One deal to go through. We found out that this Campbell, he had this guy in there, it was Daniel Campbell. Campbell, his name's Campbell. William Campbell was in a 6-year undercover agent. He had video, he had documents, he had eyewitness testimony, bribery, extortion, money laundering, treason, a Russian plan to dominate the uranium industry. Mueller let that go through. There's no statute of limitation for treason.
Well, and Mueller, there's another side. I call him Mueller because, and that's a bit of a poke at him because he was really a mule in the situation. In 2009, there is documentation confirmed through WikiLeaks that Robert Mueller took a private plane on behalf of the United States government, brought a uranium sample to Moscow. Now, when this started getting outed through WikiLeaks, the Obama administration came out and said, "Oh, that was just a little sample that was confiscated in a raid, and he was just showing Russia if this corresponded to some uranium that they were familiar with." Now, what I believe the real story from my sources was Mueller was the mule. He was bringing a sample from the Uranium One deal to Moscow in a private plane. It was a tarmac meeting. The Obama administration was famous for these tarmac meetings, whether it's Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Arizona, or this tarmac meeting, which was Robert Mueller, who was then the director of the FBI, bringing a uranium sample to the Russians for them to make sure that the purification of the uranium was okay, that they would be getting in this Uranium One deal, which, to refresh people's memory, 20% of the uranium supply of the United States was sold to Russia, and just coincidentally, the Clinton Foundation got $145 million in donations from the players that were involved in the Uranium One deal, and Billy Clinton gave one speech, about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, was given $500,000 by the same bank that was helping finance the Uranium One deal.
Treason.
Now, one other thing my sources have told me is the Uranium One deal is the tip of the iceberg of the relationship between Putin, the Clinton Foundation, and the Clintons themselves. And that there's more to come about the relationship between the real collusion between Russia and the Clintons.
All these people, I had Kevin Shipp on, and listen,
great guy.
All these people, what's their motivation? I'm a donkey. I like the donkeys. I hate the elephant. I mean, stupid. They're all up to their neck in fraud and treason and payoffs. They're all up to, and globally, it's huge. I mean, Sarkozy was arrested. That's a whole nother deal. But crime, treason to France. I mean, this whole syndicate of bribery. And I mean, they collected, $4 billion in Haiti? That's the number that's getting out there. A minimum of $1 billion. The Haitians say they didn't get hardly any of the money.
No, one of my former partners in my orthopedic practice went on multiple trips to Haiti. And he said to me very early on, Dave, the Clinton this is a fraud. He goes, what I'm seeing on the ground in Haiti shows that we're out with this money that they're talking about, that they're getting through the Clinton Foundation, their global initiative, and the like. He goes, it's not, the people of Haiti are no better. It's not existent. He goes, I don't know where this money's going, but I can tell you it's not going to the people of Haiti. This was years ago.
Yeah. It is. You can't have that kind of rampant fraud without everybody in it. Then we find out about Mitch McConnell. I didn't really talk to you about this in the pre-interview. You know, the Peter Schweitzer, the author of the Great Clinton Cash book, which lays out the Uranium One deal, came out and said that Mitch McConnell's family wealth depends on business relationships with China.
Well, look, okay.
I mean, that's disgusting. He ought to step down.
Is married to Elaine Chao, right? Who's the Secretary of Transportation, I believe.
That's right. Correct.
Transportation, I think.
Yeah.
And but her dad is a big player on the inside in China.
And Mitch McConnell basically makes money from the Chinese. He should step down. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Greg, but here's the really sinister part of this whole thing. You can draw ties probably amongst 95 to 99% of people that are in the House of Representatives and Senate from both parties to other entities that aren't representing the interests of the American public, whether it's ties to China or Russia or England or the banking system or the pharmaceutical industry or you name it. And that's what's so sinister. You know, that's the swamp. That's the swamp that Trump identified in the campaign.
And also in his inauguration, which I was.
Yes.
People should go back and read his and listen to his inauguration speech at the beginning of the day he was sworn in office. It's I can't believe he said that. But speaking of which, so the swamp, the draining of the swamp. So people are asking, when is this going to happen? You know, people make it out like Jeff Sessions doesn't know what he's doing. That Mueller is, ever closer to, going after Donald Trump and removing him from office. What's really going on behind the scenes, Dave Janda? What are your sources telling you?
So my sources are saying the following. When Trump got into office and the people around him, he realized it was really bad, but he didn't realize the depths of the criminality and the depths that would have to be done to drain the swamp. Now, all of us are impatient. Okay, everybody's saying, "Oh, I've heard this before." I get that, and many people are saying, "I haven't seen somebody put in an orange jumpsuit and perp walked that is of a high on the totem pole." They're correct when they say that, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and that's not hopium. I believe it will happen, but I believe, and I learned this from a friend of mine, Bob Mazur, former undercover DEA agent who was one of the people responsible for taking down Pablo Escobar and taking down the BCCI bank. Okay, we're laundering drug proceeds. You know, Bob said, has told me, when you're involved in an operation, and we've interviewed him a number of times on Operation Freedom. I think folks can listen to it on DaveJanda.com. Bob said, when you're taking down a huge organization, now understand something, he was dealing with the Medellin drug cartel and Pablo Escobar, which was a big operation, but small compared to this globalist swamp that has been created for well over 100 years. So Bob says, when you're working on an operation, everybody gets impatient because things aren't happening fast enough. The problem is that once you get involved in these organizations and see the criminality and the depth of that criminality, in order to bring the whole system down so it doesn't come back to life down the line, you have to get really high up on the totem pole. And to do that, you have to run extensive, deep operations that take longer than you would like to take in order to not only bring down the low tier, the middle tier. Because, Greg, when we're talking about people like the Clintons, Obama, the Bushes, Soros, we're talking about middle-level people. We're talking, as far as the Clintons, Bushes, and Obama, we're talking about puppets of the globalist syndicate, that axis of the Rothschild-Rockefeller axis. In order for this for our country to get back on its feet, taking down the Clintons, Bushes, and Obamas and Soros is not enough. Because that monster, that creature, will come back to life out of the swamp again. They need to take down the very entities above those middle-level players. And that's what's taking so long. And it probably will take many months more for that creature to be disassembled, to be obliterated. But I believe there's a lot happening. Everybody talks about Sessions. Look, this fight between Sessions and Trump, I believe, is kind of similar to a WWF match, right? The professional wrestling. Whenever you see Trump out there hammering people in public on supposedly his own team, a lot of that is theater. A lot of that is misdirection. And I believe that the misdirection is we're going to point the finger at Sessions and say things aren't moving fast enough, while in fact things have been moving fast behind the curtain on another avenue, and that's something you and I have spoken about before, and that's the Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report and what he's doing behind the scenes. Now, Greg, many people will say about that report, that report was supposed to be out January 15th, and we haven't seen it yet. Yeah, you're right, you haven't seen it. But you've seen the results of it. Now let me January 12th, 2018, it's my understanding at 6 p.m. that report was handed over to 3 subcommittees of Congress. The House Intelligence Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, and the Senate Judiciary Committee. Okay? The ramifications that we have seen based on that being handed, 2 hours after that report was handed over, the first Uranium-1 indictment came out, and all of a sudden, the fellow you mentioned, William Campbell, with his attorney, who's phenomenal, Victoria Tenzing, came out and goes, we have evidence of suitcases full of money being transferred on behalf of this in this Uranium-1 deal. So 2 hours after that report hit Congress, the subcommittees, that came out. Then all of a sudden, it came out that the Nunes memo came out that next week. All of a sudden, it gave information to Nunes to give him the firepower to get that memo out. It also stifled Adam Schiff. If you look at what Adam Schiff has been able, a globalist, has been able to put out there as propaganda, you look at the weekend of January 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th, and you'll see that Adam Schiff all of a sudden just shut the hell up. It's because that report was delivered. So this was not only an offensive weapon, it was a defensive weapon. If you also look from that point forward, all of a sudden, Nunes memo came out. McCabe was called before Congress. McCabe ended up being fired. Strzok, Page, Baker, Priestap, Comey, all were outed. Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice was terminated. The relationship between the Department of Justice and Fusion GPS was exposed. The fake dossier was exposed. The fact that the fake Russian dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC came out. There was exposure of the FISA court that they used this fake documentation to get this surveillance activity through the FISA court. Then it came out that the judge that oversaw that ended up stepping down, and General Flynn, who's an innocent man, General Flynn's sentencing was postponed. Now that's just a couple of things that happened right after that report. Then, if we look at some, if you will, headlines from Zero Hedge that came out after that happened, Peter Strzok ignored evidence of Clinton's server breach. Again, where did this come from? From the Inspector General's report. As I mentioned in my last interview with you, Greg, on January 16th, this report is going to be parceled out in small bits and pieces. Eventually, it will become public, but the small points are going to be put out that is going to take down the system. Other headlines: Australian diplomat whose tip launched Russia probe has $25 million tie to the Clintons. Where did that come from? Oh, how about information from the Inspector General's report? FBI Deputy Director McCabe told agents to lie about Benghazi. Oh, so now this report is actually focusing on some other issues like Benghazi, okay, about what that was. How about, as we've identified on our show with General Tom McInerney and General Paul Valley, Benghazi was a weapons running operation.
That's right.
Another ex-FBI director says the upcoming release of the Inspector General report to the public is, quote, pure TNT. This is a fellow by the name of Swicker. Former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swicker said today that a highly anticipated report from the DOJ's Inspector General Michael Horowitz will contain, quote, some pure TNT. The Inspector General's report is thought to include evidence of outgoing Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe's ordering agents to alter 302 forms, the paperwork an agent files after interviewing someone. Okay, how about that? How about that?
When you say alter 302.
Michael Flynn, initially the FBI came out and said, Flynn didn't lie. And then all of a sudden he did lie and he was prosecuted. Well, how about this? McCabe ordered Strzok to alter the 302 forms when they interviewed General Flynn.
He ordered him to lie.
He ordered it. You're right. It's a criminal offense.
He ordered him to lie.
But where did that come out of? That came out of the Inspector General's investigation and report. All of this. New text reveals FBI's Peter Strzok had relationship with the recused judge in the Michael Flynn case. Where did that come from? How about the Inspector General's report? McCabe is fired, right? And here's what it said. And here's what Sessions said. Sessions noted that both the Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz as well as the FBI's disciplinary office had found that Mr. McCabe had made an unauthorized disclosure to the news media and lacked candor, including under oath on multiple occasions. So McCabe was involved in leaks and he lied under oath. Again, now Sessions is saying this came from the Inspector General's report. The point is this report is alive and well. This is the report that's being used and will continue to be used to take down this criminal syndicate that you have identified.
Comey is going to be going on a book tour, and although the mainstream press, the liberal, I shouldn't even call them the press, the mainstream propaganda, they're all a fritter about it. So Mueller's flipped. He's going to testify eventually. For the good guys, Comey not flipped.
Yeah, Comey might be going on a book tour, but it's going to be to Gitmo.
Do you think so? And then what about Strzok? Is he flipped? He's got to be scared to death?
I think he's scared to death, and I think the word I heard is Strzok, Page, Prestep, Baker, former attorney for the FBI, Comey's chief of staff, have all been talking.
They're all flipped. They don't want to go to jail. I mean, you're talking multiple felonies at 10 years a pop, served consecutively. You could be in jail till you're 150.
If you make it that long.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, a lot of these people. Let me ask you this. This is something I saw on one of the Q posts, something like that. He says, you're good to answer this, and it's something that makes sense. Catherine Fitz also brought this up, that couldn't we just get people to help us and flip, and once that gets going, once people see, oh my gosh, you're going to talk, oh well, I'm going to talk, well, I'm going to offer information. Once the flipping starts, isn't this going to be an unbelievable downhill sleigh ride of people ratting on other people to save their bacon?
Yeah, these are not hardened criminals. They're criminals, but they're juvenile criminals in a sense that these folks only have loyalty to themselves. Okay, this is not trying to flip some big mafia guy. Okay, these people are junior when it comes to criminals. Yeah, they perpetrated criminal activities,
big crimes. I don't know if they even realize.
More control, more money, but these people are not hardened criminals. So these people will flip in a second, and when they flip, they won't stop singing. They'll bring as many people as they need to bring down, and they will
to save themselves.
Yeah.
Paige, Strzok's girlfriend, she's going to sing like a bird. She's like, what, 30? 35? She's going to go to jail for the rest of her life?
No, I don't think she will. You see, here's none of these people can at this point can trust each other.
So they're going to sing and flip and
the ultimate goal.
Wait, stop.
Work this up to a level where you can take out the middle level people, that being Obama's, Clinton's, Bush's, Soros, and then apply the necessary pressure on those individuals who, again, are not they're criminals, but they're not hardened criminals in a sense that they're not, they're not, if you will, the tough guys in this, and they'll immediately start to flip.
You think the Obama level people, and this is why Clapper and this is why Obama, Brennan, they're all going to go down.
Yes, I believe that.
You think Obama is going to go down?
I do. I do believe that the wheels of justice, and understand what the Inspector General's report is all about. The Inspector General's report is about a restoration of the rule of law in our country that has been missing for decades. And this is why they are so petrified of that report. Because all these players, low, middle, and high, have been able to, they took over the system to the point where the rules of justice could be directed toward their opponents and be blinded to their criminal activity. And what scares the living daylights out of this syndicate is that the restoration of the rule of law. And I believe that is the power of the Inspector General's report. And as the Inspector General's report is implemented further, and there's a full restoration of the rule of law, I believe that's what blows this system apart, this globalist syndicate system, which, by the way, Greg, when you've talked about this, and I've talked about this over the years, I know for a fact you have, and I know I have, and I know many other people that have spoken about this. We're labeled conspiracy theorists, that this system does not exist, that there's no curtain, there's no activity behind the curtain. And now in 2018, many people that not just doubted us, but demonized us, that ridiculed us, have now been proven 110% wrong.
And then we came out with the poll, 74% of people believe the deep state's running everything, 75%.
Greg, when I first went on air, October of 2010, I read a definition of the deep state by Peter Dale Scott, a Canadian economist who spoke about the deep state. I can tell you, at our radio station, the phones rang off the hook, saying this Janda guy who's new with this show Operation Freedom, he's a conspiracy theorist, and this whole talk about him talking about globalists and this deep state, this guy's crazy. No, I was right. Not crazy.
Yeah. I want to cover some more ground here. I want to talk a bit about this, one of my pet peeves. The Iran no signature deal, nuclear deal, which is a fraud. It's a no-deal deal. It's a fraud. You don't give somebody $150 billion and say, here you go, with no signatures. It's a fraud.
Well, you do if some of that money, Greg, is going to get filtered back to all the little players in this system that have Swiss accounts.
Ding, 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 because
money. You pointed this out before. You're right. Follow the money.
You got McMaster, who loved the no signature deal, the no deal deal. He's out, another globalist.
But look at McMaster's pedigree.
Yeah.
Card-carrying member of the Council on Foreign Relations, one of the large globalist think tanks that has adversely affected the sovereignty of our country.
Yeah, they should all be in jail. Seriously. He also could not say Islamic terrorist. He got paid by George Soros. McMaster, the General McMaster, he doesn't care about his pension. He was making more money.
McMaster right now has been terminated from his position, right? And remember, initially, well, McMaster is going to be terminated and he's going to go back to the Pentagon.
No, not now.
What?
Not now.
Not now. That's my understanding is he's not going back to the Pentagon.
They don't need him. My God.
Well, they don't need him. They don't want him. And let's face it, there were some globalists within the Pentagon system that have also been purged.
Yeah, thank you, Obama. I want to come back to so he's out. He loved the Iran deal, and I think this is important. Tillerson, who I really think the president wanted him to work, but he's a globalist. I mean, you could call him an outsider. You can't run ExxonMobil and be an outsider. Come on, stop.
How can you not be CEO of a large multinational oil company and not be a globalist?
That's right. Hey, he liked the Iran no deal too. I mean, come on, this is insulting to me. Yeah, this is a lie. This is a fraud. And so now he's out, and the guy that discovered it, Mike Pompeo, as a congressman, so he's the Secretary of State. So let me get this straight here. So you have Bolton, who's going to be the security advisor who hates the no signature deal. You have Pompeo, who discovered the no signature deal and hates it. So now we have, I would have loved to have had a real deal with real inspections. I would have loved to have that. I don't want war with Iran. But don't tell me there's a deal when there's no deal, when it's a lie, a fraud. And I say everybody in these countries, in France, in Germany, in the UK, the US, Russia, China, people got paid off.
Oh, it was a huge money laundering operation. Period.
Is this going to come out in the future too?
I believe so. I do believe so. And let me tell you something. Many people say, Pompeo is a globalist, and he could well have ties to the globalist syndicate. Look, there are various silos in the globalist syndicate, right? You got the Rothschild-Rockefeller axis that has run the show for the globalist system. That's what in the process of being taken down. I also believe there's a silo in the globalist syndicate that's more, hey, wait a minute. No, we don't want a weak America. We want a strong United States of America, but they still have this twinge toward globalism. Look, Pompeo might be associated with that wing of the globalist faction. I get it. But understand something. A friend of ours who's been on my show, Operation Freedom, he's been on our platform, DaveJanda.com, he's been on your show, Bill Benny, who's the NSA whistleblower of all whistleblowers. Okay, Bill was asked to meet with Pompeo. Pompeo called up Bill Benny and said, President Trump wants me to talk to you about what's really going on with this Russian hacking issue about was it a hack, was it a leak? Mike Pompeo called Bill Benny. Bill Benny went in and met with Pompeo. And if folks want to hear about we have that on our platform on the introductory segment on DaveJanda.com. But long story short, Bill talked to Pompeo. And Pompeo was willing to meet with Benny and, according to Bill, was willing to listen to Bill. And a true globalist of the Rothschild-Rockefeller axis, one, never would have called Bill Benny, two, never would have met with Bill Benny, and three, never would have listened to Bill Benny. And there is indications that the things Bill Benny talked to Pompeo about have, in fact, not only were listened to, but have been acted upon.
Are they going to take the prize are the Rockefellers and not just the George Soroses, but the Rockefellers? Those are the people, the Rothschilds. They could have their assets taken from them. Is that where we're going?
You know what? Yeah, and I think, you know what, Greg, and you and I have talked about this before, and you've talked about it at length with other folks. This executive order back in December of 2017, authored by Trump.
Yeah,
and it's key. And folks can go to whitehouse.gov to get it. It's executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. Now, many people, and it talks about the human trafficking issue, which is the core of the globalists. It's how they control people, blackmail people, and how they get a lot of money. There's more money made in human trafficking than there is the drug trade in this world, okay, which many people find hard to believe, but true. But many people say, well, okay, so blocking property. Well, nothing's really happened with that. And I sent you some information from Department of Treasury, from the Office of Foreign Assets Control. And it comes down to, and you've looked at it, 1,100 pages, three columns of assets that have been seized since that executive order came out.
Airplanes, businesses, property. 1,100 pages.
Right, 1,100 pages. So, and then you add to it the executive order that came out on March 1st by President Trump, which amended, and you've talked about this, the court-martial situation, which, according to some folks, opens the door for military tribunals. And then you add to what President Trump just put out on March 13th, a release through the White House. President Donald J. Trump is working to end human trafficking. Here's what he says: my administration will focus on ending the absolutely horrific practice of human trafficking. And I am prepared to bring the full force and weight of our government, whatever we can do in order to solve this horrific problem. That was a declaration, again, a declaration of war. As you mentioned, his inauguration speech, his State of the Union speech, his executive order, the Treasury Department going on this asset seizure, the executive order about the military tribunals, and now this release on March 13th. Those are all declarations of war against the globalist syndicate, in particular the Rothschild-Rockefeller silo of globalists that utilize human trafficking, pedophile networks as a source of money, income, control, power, and blackmail.
Schiff said he said the same thing, that it was more money. He said, and he explained why. He says, because if you have a line of blow, it's over, bye, gone. If you have an 8-year-old child, as sick as it is, which is sick, they can recycle them over and over again. That's sick.
Not only
that is
right,
sick,
and it's sick. But Craig,
you should get the death penalty for that.
I interviewed Craig Sawyer, and it's a free interview on our site, DaveJanda.com. People should go to that. Craig Sawyer, former SEAL Team 6 operative. He's accumulated a team, Viper team of former Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Delta Force individuals. They're taking out the pedophile networks behind the curtain. In that interview, at a certain point, and I said to Craig, and I've known Craig a period of time, and I knew what was coming. I said, Craig, what these globalists do, what this syndicate does, is they use these kids, they recycle these kids are repetitively raped, correct? His answer was yes. And then I said, Craig, after they're done raping these kids, are many of these kids in fact murdered? He said, yes. And here comes more money, Greg. And after they're murdered, Greg, and this is the whole thing is just so twisted and warped and sick, they then utilize these children's organs and they put them on the black market for organ procurement.
Barf.
They also utilize pictures with these kids with other adults as blackmail, another source of income. That is what we're dealing with our enemy. And to all those people that say this is pure conjecture, that this is fear porn, here's what I say to those folks: crawl out from underneath your rock and deal with some reality, because this is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by this as well, and I want to kind of end here. Your budget can be, if you're struggling, and you can confiscate. In this case, you're talking about the Rothschilds, and you're talking about the Rockefellers. You're talking about trillions of dollars.
Yes,
that's what we're talking about.
It can make a big dent. It can make a big dent in your national debt.
Wow. So we're talking. Ultimately, the ultimate goal is for the Trump administration to go after the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers of the world, to cut the head off the snake and take all their trillions in assets, airplanes, businesses, cash, bonds, diamonds, artwork, gold. They're going to clean them out.
And absolutely, and take it a step further. You've reported on this, and I've reported on this. I made a little bit of a splash on it. You created a huge tsunami because you have such a huge platform. Look at what Catherine Austin Fitts and Dr. Mark Skidmore have presented. There's $21 trillion that's missing. It's not missing. It's not missing. It didn't vanish. It's in the globalist pockets. It's in their accounts. 21 trillion just from the Department of Defense and Housing and Urban Development. Two cabinet positions. 21 trillion missing between, when was it, 1998 and 2016?
Yeah, 15.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Greg, imagine if we got, I don't know, 15 trillion of that 21 trillion back?
5 trillion.
Right?
5 trillion would be a...
This is money that can be found. This is money that can be that exists, and this is money that ultimately, when confiscated, and this is why the globalists are so hysterical. This is why their media that they own and operate, their propaganda arm, the CNNs, the ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, even Fox for that matter. This is why they're so hysterical. Because it's all going away. They see it. They see it all going away. Their power, their control, their money, the whole enchilada. And this is why their goal is to end this, the Trump administration in any way possible, to prevent the house of cards from completely imploding.
And Trump is backed by the U.S. military.
And Trump is backed by the U.S. military.
Totally,
100%. And I believe a number of patriots in the intelligence community.
And the thing about Joe Janda.
One other thing.
Okay, go ahead.
When General Michael Flynn, who's an innocent man, is exonerated, I believe General Flynn is a patriot and will not go away. And General Flynn will come back like you've never seen anyone come back in our history. And he will take a flamethrower, a truth and fact flamethrower to the globalist syndicate and what's left of it in Washington, on Wall Street, and in Hollywood.
What they did to him was disgusting. I mean, here's a guy with a security clearance nearly as high as the president, as high as the Secretary of State, as high as Brennan, Clapper, any of these people, and they made him out to be a Russian spy.
They had
It's disgusting.
The globalists despised General Flynn because they could not trust General Flynn. Because remember what General Flynn did several years ago?
When he came out against Obama.
When he was director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, he was the guy who came out with the information that the United States, along with some of our allies, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jordan, UAE, even a little Israel in there, they were funding, weaponizing, and training an organization called ISIS.
Ding, 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 ding.
And when he did that, the globalists declared war on Mike Flynn.
Yep. Yeah. I reported on that. I did one story about a truck leaving Houston. Mark I Plumbing got sold, and the plumbing company had nothing to do with it. They had absolutely nothing to do with it. But they left the decals on the truck, and lo and behold, there's like a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the back of it, and an ISIS machine gun. And that guy went from Port of Houston to Turkey, down to Syria. Anyway.
And one of the ways they were weaponized, and we talked about it earlier, about McCabe shutting up the investigation into Benghazi, was a weapons running operation that not only took out Gaddafi and not only ended up with his gold and his silver in the hands of the West, but what it also did, it opened up business opportunities from people who had donated to the Clinton Foundation, but it also then reversed those flow of arms, of which the ambassador Stevens was the front guy on this. It reversed those flow of arms into Turkey, into Syria, and helped weaponize ISIS. It's all linked.
Oh my gosh, it's disgusting. I just want to one last thing. Joe Janda, who I like, is in at the White House. He was the guy that said they exonerated Hillary. I love it when you simple. Yeah. Exonerated Hillary. Tried to frame Donald Trump for a crime he didn't commit. I mean, just because Mueller slipped doesn't mean he's going to be just tarred and feathered. Mueller is going to be embarrassed, but rather be embarrassed, and completely defrocked than to be embarrassed and defrocked and be in prison. Is that what the deal? What's the deal with Joe Janda coming in?
I can't think of two better people to be involved in this process than Joe Janda, a former federal prosecutor, and also his wife, Victoria Tensing, who's representing William Campbell, who you brought up, who was one of the whistleblowers on the Uranium One deal.
What's the idea here? They're going to go on the offense, right? I mean, this is an offensive
Absolutely.
move. They're going to go start tearing down people. I mean, this is disgusting.
By offense, what that means, Greg,
the truth
is they're going to present the truth and the facts.
How is Mueller? I mean, why are they letting him continue with this charade?
Because I believe Mueller from the very beginning, the day before he was named special counsel, he met with Donald Trump. I believe it was at that meeting that he was flipped. I believe Mueller from the very beginning has been running a operation that was meant to, if you will, bring about all these Obama, Hillary, globalist people, put them all in the same room, get information on them, the Strozicks, the Pages, the McCabe's, and all of a sudden they're getting picked off one by one. I believe it was meant to really take attention away from what the Inspector General was doing so that investigation could continue, and we could get to, if you will, a point where there's a reestablishment of the rule of law. And meanwhile, I believe ultimately at that meeting with Trump, and people will say, no way this is the case. I believe it is the case. I believe at that meeting, I believe Mueller was flipped. I believe Mueller was told, this is what you're going to do. And the bottom line is, what's your rainbow at the end of all this? Your rainbow is if you play the game, if you help us reestablishment of the rule of law, even though you have huge ties to the globalist syndicate.
And you're a criminal,
you'll
traitor.
Get a pardon. You'll get a pardon.
You know, he's going to get dirt all over him, though. He'll never recover his reputation.
Well, no, and nor should
but
he.
He just won't go to jail.
He won't go to jail. He won't be sitting in.
He would never get out.
He won't be sitting in Gitmo with Comey.
Actually, treason is still a death penalty offense.
Yes.
Because people die when you commit treason.
Right.
This is not like, oh, well, you sold us out. Oh, well, it's okay. No, you should be lined up. You should be hung.
Yep.
I mean, this is because people die. Treason. Benghazi. People died. That was treason. That was treason. People died.
That's right. And I believe they were allowed to die. That's the sick.
Yeah. Well, if it wasn't...
They had to clean up loose ends so that these folks weren't going to talk. And that included the people who died. In particular, the guy they really, I believe, wanted to close that loose end was the Ambassador Stevens, who was the guy on the ground running the weapons running operation.
Actually, I think they wanted them all to die, but they ran into a buzzsaw when they tried to knock off the headquarters. They ran into superior firepower.
Well, they weren't anticipating that would happen.
Yeah. Oops.
Whoops.
Yeah. Oops. I'm for our guys. For our guys.
Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty. If they hadn't fought that night like they did, that I believe all this never would have been brought forward.
You should see the movie 13 Hours. Go rent it.
It's a great movie.
And they said there wasn't enough explosions and bombs.
Yeah.
You should go rent it. It's unbelievable. You get done with the movie, you're like,
yeah.
I mean, you're exhausted.
You are exhausted.
God bless those men. Listen, thanks for coming on. Just incidentally, just so people know, this is what you're saying is based on deep sources in Washington, deep sources that are high to the top. I don't want to know them. I know some of them, but deep sources. All the stuff you're talking about is sourced information, not just Dave Janda. Dr. Dave thinks that Dave Janda thinks because of this and this and this and this and these people. You have sources for all this stuff, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Multiple sources, and these are folks that I've known for many years. That, frankly, Greg, many times when they tell me some things over the years, I doubt them. I'll even say it to their face. I don't think this is going to come to pass. I think you're wrong on this one. And I can tell you 100% of the time over the years, I have been proven wrong when I've said that to these folks. And they've never told me something that hasn't been the case.
The good guys.
Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes a couple years to come to that it becomes more common knowledge. And frankly, if some folks rely on the fake media, the mainstream media, they'll never know the fact.
That's just I'm almost ashamed. Of course, when I was at CNN, I did real stuff. Of course, that probably got me fired because I did real stuff. But that I don't know how they're functioning. I don't know how you come out and say McMaster was fired at the Washington Post, and your boss doesn't say, wait, whoa, you got to call over to the White House, right? You got a name for that. You're going to call. We're not just going to print that, but they did. And of course, indeed, he was not fired. He resigned. Yeah. I'm not happy to see him go, but that's poor. Listen, honest mistakes. No. That's not an honest mistake. You do all kinds of things so you don't make mistakes. No, this is a real mistake that you wanted to make.
Yeah.
That you're reckless. It's a reckless mistake.
I'll go back to 1988. That's how I got involved in all this. Ronald Reagan asked me to come to Washington, work on healthcare policies, work with C. Everett Koop. And one of the first meetings I was at, it was at the White House, and we were discussing domestic policy issues, in particular healthcare. And we talked about this at length. And then I went home that night, back to the hotel, and I watched the evening news. Brather, Brokaw, I can't remember who was on ABC, Peter Jennings, I think, at the time. And I was channel surfing, and they all started talking about something that we had been talking about earlier in the day at the White House. But their presentations were, if you flipped what we discussed and you turned it on its head 180 degrees different, that's what they were reporting as being the case. I go back to the White House the next day, and I said to some folks there, I go, wow, I was watching the news last night, and whoever's doing the public relations here for the White House, you got to call them on the carpet or something, because what they presented on the evening news, on the three major news channels, was 180 degrees, completely opposite of what we discussed and what was determined. And these folks looked at me, they started laughing because I was the newbie. And he said, Dave, they reported exactly what they were told. See, Dave, learn now. Everything that you see in the media, in the paper, it's all propaganda. It's all misdirection.
That's so unbelievable. Yeah, they hated me, man.
1988, Greg. That was 1988.
They hated me because I was right.
Well, you're a truth guy.
Yes.
You're a truth and fact guy. And that doesn't hold much place in the fake media.
I didn't get the memo. I'm supposed to act surprised and not break anything. Which is
why you're doing this rather than that.
And I just wanted to just say one last thing, just to wrap this up, and just so people know, because people tell me, well, nothing's ever going to change. I said, don't say that. Don't give up. Nothing's ever going to change, and they never go to jail. Just to wrap it up, say, I'm understanding that the good guys are firmly in control of this situation at present. Would you please just talk a little bit about that? Are the good guys firmly in control, even though it may not look like it?
I would say that they are in control. I believe they don't have 100% control of the system at this point, but they're well above 70 or 80% of control. I think that when people say things will never change, I think that's true. I think that's true if we continued the way we were going. But I truly believe it has changed. And what has changed is I believe the rule of law is being reestablished behind the curtain, soon to see curtain open. And I believe as the rule of law is, if you will, reinstituted, I believe that there will be some very hard evidence that things have changed immensely to the positive side of things.
One other thing I wanted to get in about, you talked about that. They just had this thing up in, voter fraud. I mean, they got evidence of voter fraud in this latest House race in Pennsylvania, Lamb and Saccone. Listen, I think Roy Moore, disgusting. The Republicans, the GOP, Mitch McConnell, and his super PAC spent $33 million. Had he rather have a Democrat? I think there was all kinds of evidence of voter fraud with all of that. What's going on with that? Did they just leave that go? Is there some other bigger plan with that? What's up with the voter fraud?
So the word I hear is the Department of Homeland Security has been investigating voter fraud issues, and they are looking back, as far as I understand it, back to the presidential election in 2016. And it's my understanding that the Department of Homeland Security is going to issue a report probably within, I would think, by the end of April, that looks at the voter fraud that occurred. And I believe the vote totals, about just looking at the Trump-Clinton vote totals, I think will change based on their findings. I believe that will lead to being a jumping off point to look at some of the special elections that have occurred since the November 2016 election. In particular, the Senate race in Alabama and this House race in Pennsylvania. There are many people I know. I went to college in Pennsylvania. I have friends in the area where the election occurred in Pennsylvania. Many, and these are people that are more independent, if you will, and they're saying, there was some real hanky-panky here. We don't understand why this isn't being investigated. Why would this, what's his name, Saccone? Why would he why would he concede? Why didn't he challenge things? I believe the reason why he didn't challenge things, and I believe the reason why Moore didn't challenge things, although he was a tainted candidate, it appears, but
he was tainted, but I don't know if it's true. I mean, I don't know about that.
We don't know. I mean, right, but there was some there were, it would have been nice if, I guess, some things couldn't have been brought up if they had a different candidate. But anyway, the bottom line is that I believe what's going to happen is they're going to use this Department of Homeland Security finding report on voter fraud, and they are going to then look at these special elections have occurred, and in particular they're going to zero in on the Pennsylvania election, the congressional seat, and then the Alabama Senate seat, and they're going to see that there were very similar voter irregularities and fraud that occurred. And what's going to happen with that? Is it going to overturn those elections? It might not, but it might. And I believe that this Homeland Security report is another step toward the reinstitution of the rule of law, because I believe most Americans, if not the vast majority of Americans, believe that our election process has been tainted, not by the Russians, but our election process has been tainted by the very individuals in the globalist syndicate that have wielded more power and control and actually monetary gain out of the system over the past 100 years or so.
We're going to leave it there, almost an hour, Dr. Dave, and just fascinating. I mean, just fascinating. Dr. Dave Janda, DaveJanda.com is the website, but the show, the idea, patriotism, Operation Freedom. Dr. Dave Janda, thank you so much for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
I thank you very much, Greg. And if folks are interested in the radio show, they can always stream it live at DaveJanda.com every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. And you've been a prized guest of ours. Everybody always, the listeners love you when you come on because you just lay it on the line and you're so energetic and you're just such an incredible patriot. And I thank you for everything that you do with USA Watchdog, because without you, I truly believe the millions of people that benefit from your efforts would be really left in the dark about what's really going on.
Well, you're very kind, Dr. Dave. Again, Dr. Dave Janda, Operation Freedom. You can find him online easily. Dr. Dave, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks for having me aboard, Greg. It's been an honor.